Star Citizen has been trying to build the exact thing that just killed Starfield for the last 13 years now. Because Starfield is dead. It's not canceled, it's dead. There's a difference. You can only cancel sequels to games somebody greenlit and planned on making. A dead franchise just never gets that far. During Xbox's biggest restructuring ever, Microsoft walked through Bethesda's IP holdings. They picked out the franchises that mattered to them going forward. Franchises like Fallout, The Elder Scrolls, Doom, Quake, Wolfenstein. And they ignored Starfield like it didn't even exist. Just a few years earlier, Xbox spent $400 million developing Bethesda's first new universe in 25 years. In less than 3 years post-launch, it's already been completely abandoned. Ignoring the carnage of it all, because lots of Bethesda developers were laid off too, this is the most useful market verdict that could have happened for a Star Citizen fan that's been on the edge about how Star Citizen's being developed. I'm not a Starfield hater either. I wanted to love that game. I bought the deluxe version, and then I picked up the collector's edition too with the watch. I own a copy of Elite Dangerous and No Man's Sky. You could say I like sci-fi games, and I've supported them with my wallet. Starfield had every advantage Star Citizen doesn't. A huge, accomplished studio that's known for massively successful RPGs. Basically unlimited budget with a publisher writing the checks, and it still wasn't successful enough. So the smart move isn't to point and laugh. That's not why I made this video. I think there's a real opportunity to learn from this and then ask the uncomfortable question. Is Star Citizen about to walk into the same grave? This kind of analysis is what I do for a living. I'm an analyst, and after thinking about it for a few days, I kept coming back to 4 takeaways. Let me know in the comments which one scares you the most, or better yet, point out what I missed. My first takeaway is that Starfield sold us an epic tale in a giant galaxy and delivered a menu and loading screen simulator. At launch, you couldn't fly from space down to a planet. You couldn't fly between planets either. Every move was a loading screen. Land, load, orbit, load, travel, load. You get it. Apparently, they eventually added flying from planet to planet years later, which still didn't help. From what I've read at least, because I'm not installing it again. The best part of the update was the autopilot, because flying was so dull in Starfield, it proved that the feature doesn't help if it's not enhancing the experience. That's the theme in this video, and both games need to avoid that development pitfall. Everything in the game has to have a reason to exist with solid gameplay. I think Star Citizen gets this immersion right in a massive way, and it's one of the features that separates it from the other space games on the market. You drop through a planet's atmosphere in stunning detail, and there's no loading screen. From orbit to the ground, the game is one seamless world. It's a visual that sells what you're doing instantly and conveys the scale of the game. Bethesda knew how powerful that motif was. They showed you doing that in the CGI trailer. Star Citizen actually built it and has had the tech now for nearly 10 years to do it in the game. That's awesome, but it's also the trap, because a seamless world that is empty is really empty. And empty just isn't fun. That's the second takeaway, and I think that this, combined with the stale RPG formula, is why Starfield doesn't really work for the audience. It's also a problem that Star Citizen currently has, so it's pretty relevant to our interests here. Starfield pitched 1,000 planets. Star Citizen initially pitched 100 star systems. Sounds incredible. But you don't build 1,000 planets by hand, and CIG quickly found out that building 100 star systems at any kind of meaningful fidelity is equally impossible, especially once they got seamless flight working. So instead, you're left with proc-gen in Starfield, where you write an algorithm that spits them out, and you get hundreds of worlds that are empty and identical. Land on a rock, walk to an abandoned lab that's pretty much one of a few stock assets they recycle, find the same dead body in the same spot with the same loot, on a planet 3 systems over. A mile wide, an inch deep. That's not me being a hater, that's Bruce Naismith, the guy who co-led Skyrim and worked on Starfield, who said flat out, it's not in the same class as Skyrim or Fallout, and that procedural planets were the core problem. That's more damning than anything I could have said. Space is inherently boring, to quote a Bethesda designer about his own space game. And when players said that the planets felt empty, Bethesda's answer was that it was realistic. Todd Howard basically said space is mostly empty rock, so the emptiness was intentional, and compared it to the moon landings. They shipped a boring game and told you that boredom was the point. It's a serious problem that Star Citizen needs to solve, and it does have a solution on paper at least. It's part of the Genesis Planet tech, and that specific tool is called Starkitect. It's built on purpose to be everything Star Citizen's planets weren't. Where Starfield's algorithm rolled dice and gave you the same lab over and over, Starkitect is designed to scatter locations by logical rules, so an outpost shows up near ore deposits with mining structures and habitation, and maybe a derelict ship generates next to an anti-air turret. places that make sense where they are. CIG's own stated goal for it is that each location has, their words here, a unique personality that doesn't feel repetitive. I have my doubts about ProcGen. It's kind of like communism because every time somebody talks about it, I think about all the games that failed and ruined the experience. Maybe we haven't had real ProcGen yet after all. I mean, it's why I can't play No Man's Sky for more than an hour. I hype myself up to do it, and then there's just nothing about it that excites me. Funny enough, I went to school for architecture. I loved designing things. I hated the actual job, though. So when I hear CIG talking about a system literally called Starkitect, maybe that's why I want it to work so badly. And honestly, if they'd called architecture Starkitecture, I might have actually finished. The reality is, Starkitect isn't proven yet. I'd say a large part of Star Citizen's future success rests on it working. Genesis Planet Tech is slated to come in with 4.10 in August and build from there. Hopefully, that is. I mean, I just did a video on Star Citizen's delays. Right now, it's mostly something CIG has demoed at CitizenCon, not something we've loaded up and explored for 100 hours. I hope to be blown away, but I'm trying to be objective. And hey, maybe I'll get a chance to be a Starkitect after all once Star Citizen implements one of its marquee features, base building. I think that player base building is another hedge to fill the empty world, and it's an important one because it gives players ownership of something that strengthens their personal connection to the game. It worked in Star Wars Galaxies. Owning a home in that game that you could decorate made the server feel like a place that you sunk your limited time into. And that's what gave it meaning. Bases also give players a place to fight over, so there's so much gameplay that can come from a location that's dynamic in an unscripted way. Player-crafted space stations they teased add additional gameplay as trading hubs and interaction points between groups. When I saw that announcement at CitizenCon, I thought about how smart that was because those empty worlds are the elephant in the room when you show somebody Star Citizen. Which leads me right into the third major takeaway. In games, your actions have to matter. In a single-player game like Starfield, they need to be amplified or the game feels meaningless. The world is supposed to react to you because you're the main character and you know it. I'd argue that Starfield didn't. Clear out a base of pirates, nothing really changes. Your choices kind of went nowhere. I felt like I was a ghost walking through a diorama, doing everything and changing nothing. And about 15 hours in, my brain figured out that none of it counts and you're done. But maybe that's just me. I just described my experience with the game at least. That's where Star Citizen is starting to come together with the introduction of crafting systems. Players are having an impact on the economy, even though we're currently lacking meaningful player trading tools. We're still making that happen on our own. In fact, Star Citizen expanded way beyond the initial design where players were just a piece of the whole. By introducing crafting at this depth, anything of meaning is made by somebody with a real supply chain, and that gives everyone in that chain a reason to exist. I buy into that wholly. For example, take a stock prospector and try to break some asteroids. You'll be frustrated in no time, but add the right modules in a player-crafted mining head, and the mass of the rock that you can crack literally triples. Thanks to the 1099 Alpha Citizen boys for helping me set that up last week. It completely changed that part of the game for me. The last takeaway is going to be the hardest for some people to accept. Starfield had a publisher and a deadline. It had to ship, it couldn't delay forever, and it had to prove the concept was worth building on in basically one shot. Well, it shipped, it didn't find an audience, and now it's dead. I think it sold well, at least initially, but I have no clue if it was profitable. If we've learned anything from the Xbox disclosure during this restructuring, it's that AAA games are an absolutely terrible investment. Their own CEO said it. In a typical year, they lose 64 cents on every dollar they invest. It's amazing how few games are making money, and those games are basically subsidizing the rest of the industry. Which is why what Star Citizen is doing is even more incredible to me. Chris Roberts built a game that pays for itself even when the game is literally on fire like it is right now. There's no publisher boardroom that can close it in the restructuring because no publisher owns it. Say what you want about ship prices, and I know you will, but Star Citizen earns its survival straight from the people who want it. Every year, for over a decade. While billion-dollar studios are getting wiped off a balance sheet. The thing that killed all of them, being a line item in somebody else's budget, that's the one thing that won't impact Star Citizen. Star Citizen has something else that Starfield never had. A group of incredibly passionate backers that go to fight for the game in the comment section on YouTube. A group that supports it directly with their wallet. That's something even big established studios can't count on anymore. No wonder the industry hates this game. But that same freedom is the curse. A deadline forces you to have no choice but to fuck around and find out if you built the next hit or the next flop. Star Citizen has no deadline, which means nothing forces it to ever finish. They have all the time in the world to keep building a beautiful empty universe, and they never once have to stand in front of a studio-ending verdict until they feel like it. I think if Star Citizen's funding ever starts to decline, it would be gradual rather than off a cliff. Now, of course, there's major downsides to that for us as backers. I just can't pretend that there aren't. But given the choice, I'll take that over the publisher model every day. The numbers say I'm not the only one rejecting those games too. There's a lot riding on just a few systems that can save Star Citizen from being Starfield 2.0. I'm hopeful, and we're not going to have to wait that long to find out, which is wild to say, and we've been waiting nearly 14 years for this game now. I mean, what's another month or two? That's just my opinion, so tell me in the comments, from what you've seen, is Star Citizen learning Starfield's lesson, or are we repeating it? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the verse.